Kuphina kuphi emakhaya amadolobheni asekoplasta khona sawubona ke mbukele and a warm welcome to this week's edition of Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Sindethela ke lihlelo bahamba phambili SABC 1 eMzansi for sure. Sinisakatela ke isikhathi sinye na ku SABC La High and SABC Plus. Mina ke ngisimpiwe Ngcongwane. Bekunene we can agree that we all have that common pocket draining item in our homes, and that is the high cost of electricity. Singamoshi ke isikhathi singene ke shika endzabeni yethu namhla. Electricity costs are climbing, and for so many households, every unit counts. But what if the real drain on your budget is what's quietly running in your home, and that is power-hungry appliances and the way you could be using your energy? So today, we break down the everyday appliance use and the habits that are burning a hole in your pocket. Manje khuluma kabanti ke ngetinvo letidla gesi wakho kakhulu inyanga nenyanga asamukele ke Wes Ready. He is an energy expert here to open our eyes and share tips on smart, practical ways to stretch our power further and even save money. Well, Mr. Ready, very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. I mean, it's a very important discussion that we'll be having today, just given the fact that, so many South Africans are financially stretched. And it looks like South Africa is now going prepaid. Why this shift?
So I think it's a very important question, and not a lot of people know the main reason behind the prepaid, right? So I personally am involved in the rollout of smart electricity prepaid meters, right? This is going to be a big savior for us in terms of load shedding. Okay, so load shedding was a sore point for us for the longest time.
Yeah.
Okay, with smart prepaid meters, what the provider is allowed to do or able to do is basically drop your meter rating at peak times, like 6 to 8 in the evening and the morning, and instead of load shedding, we do load reduction.
Right.
So basically, in a whole suburb, they can drop the rating on the meter, okay, and then basically drop the load, of course. So it's definitely going to be a big help in terms of load shedding. So we can now move towards load reduction, easing the strain on the grid. And then the other big things is things like, I think estimation is obviously a really big sore point for people. You get this 10,000 Rand bill and you're like, I didn't even use that, So it allows for accurate billing, obviously, because the municipalities can...
What really causes that? Is it do you think it's intentional on the power provider?
I don't think it's intentional, but I think, of course, there is a challenge with resources. We've always had that thing where, of course, you got the guy at the gate knocking on the gate to come and take the reader from the meter reading, of course, right? So smart meter prepaid rollout now eliminates the need for that because you can take that reading remotely. They can basically be in a control center and say, Simpiwe's house, how much have you used for this month and how much do we need to charge you kind of thing. So it also eliminates the need for resources to send people out and, of course, do physical readings.
But then do we have an option, Mr. Reddy? I mean, can we opt out of prepaid electricity? And if so, what are other cheaper options?
Okay, so of course there can be some negative thoughts around it, I think, for many people, but we have to understand that firstly for the consumer and the user, it means that accurate billing is going to be on your side. Is that you're not going to get the surprise bill all of a sudden and be thinking, sure, I never spent this kind of money. So in terms of opt-out, unfortunately, it is mandatory from the side of course, our utility provider and the municipalities. So there isn't an option to opt out. But I think it's important that we point out that many South Africans don't understand who they're actually buying electricity from. Okay, so when we have this conversation about prepaid meters, are we talking about you in the estate where you're actually getting power from the body corporate, or are we talking about you in a freestanding house where you're getting from the municipality or ESCOM? So there's a big difference in that, and it's an interesting conversation.
I mean, it's been a long-standing debate. What really makes postpaid electricity more expensive than prepaid?
Okay, so
Isn't electricity consumption the same?
It is the same, but what we need to understand is that basically on the same day every month. So we need to say on the 3rd at your house, okay, we started with that value in kilowatt hours, and on the 3rd of the following month, we took the reading and subtracted the difference between the two to say that was what you used in units, okay? So of course there's resources, like I said, involved in calculating that, okay? But I think the biggest challenge, especially for municipalities and the utility, is revenue collection. Because postpaid allows for these accounts to get, of course, run up to exorbitant amounts without payment getting made, where with prepaid, of course, it means that you pay for it before you use it. So revenue collection is obviously very, very accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also another discussion on which items, consume more electricity over the others, because there's been an argument that the cold emitting appliances, such as refrigerators, such as fans, they they don't really, consume as much electricity than the heat-emitting appliances like your stove, heater, geyser, etc. Is that fact? Is that fiction? A myth?
So I think in your home, definitely your element-based appliances. So your geyser is your number one culprit. Okay, your geyser works at sort of between 2,500 to 3,000 watts, or 2.5 to 3 kilowatts, and it's basically working all through the day. So your geyser is your number one culprit. But things like heaters, of course, your stove, anything element-based is definitely going to be your biggest consumers.
Okay.
So definitely things like fans don't consume as much as your element-based appliances. But air conditioners, on the other hand, basically uses almost the same process as a heater, but in reverse. So air conditioners.
Oh, so air conditioners consume more electricity?
Yes, they consume a lot
that.
of electricity. They consume a lot of electricity. Compared to a fan.
Do you want to share with us the mechanism behind that? I mean, it emits cold rather than heat.
Yeah. So the process involved in, of course, removing the heat from a room or a home, for that matter, effectively using gas and stuff like the aircon does involve a lot of work for the air conditioner. And it uses, of course, power in the form of wattage in order to achieve that. So whereas a fan, for example, is just turning a motor. So a lot of people ask me on my videos and stuff, what's the difference if I'm trying to cool myself in peak summer with a fan versus an air conditioner?
Yes,
all right.
Yes.
And you're looking at something like a fan costing you 10% of what your air conditioner is going to cost you. Yeah.
Right,
so your air conditioner is using a lot more energy, and it's costing you. I mean, if you look at even commercial buildings, for that matter, right? A building like this, like we're sitting in now, you've got a massive centralized air conditioning system that's ducting pipes into each of the studios and the offices and stuff.
Okay.
And of course, this massive air conditioning system is probably your biggest consumer of electricity here.
Does the time of the day, make a difference in terms of consumption?
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a really important term for people to pay attention to called time of use.
Say that again?
Time of use.
Time of use, okay.
Time of use. So basically, you buy electricity, of course, in your home, right? And let's say that you normally buy electricity at 3 Rand per unit, 3 Rand per kilowatt hour. But what the municipalities and utility would be aiming to do is during high consumption periods, like 6 and 8 in the evening, when you're cooking, you're taking showers, you're doing the homework with the kids, right? You would be paying 5 Rand per unit at that time. So which means that at the time you're using it, okay, so they're influencing you basically to say that it costs them more to generate more power to keep up with demand in a peak period, okay? So what it means, they're charging you more.
So basically it has to do with demand more than the actual appliance itself.
100%. So your time of use tariffs means that during the daytime when there's the least consumption, and I advise a lot of people to say, for example, your washing machine, right? Unfortunately, with our habits of going to work and coming back home, you're doing the washing in the evening if there's no one there at home, right? But if there was a way to speak to maybe somebody at home, do the washing during a non-peak period during the day, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So time of use is something that a lot of people don't know about. They don't know exists. But if you actually look at the schedules on the municipalities and stuff, they actually explain to you that basically we charge you more during peak periods. Yeah. So if you shift your loads and basically pay attention to when you're using it, it could actually save you a lot of money.
And then the lights, there's talk of the LED lights consuming less electricity than the conventional lights.
Yeah, it's 100% true. I think only probably 10 years ago, we used to use these things called halogen bulbs.
Halogen, yes.
Right.
That's the word.
And the one thing about it is if you ever touched it, firstly, it burns you. I don't know if you remember. They get really hot.
Yeah, it is really, really hot.
And I mean, they use a lot of power. And then we went over to what's called the CFL bulbs. It was the twisty ones. And a lot of those fluorescent bulbs are what we call compact fluorescent lights. Okay, that's what CFL stands for. And now we're on to the light emitting diode, which is the LED. And this is, of course, the least consumption. So put it in perspective for you. The bulb in your room that lights up your bedroom, for example, was operating at 50 watts, okay, for every hour that you had it on. The CFLs dropped it down to 10 watts for the same amount of brightness because you don't want to sacrifice brightness. And now with the LEDs, we're down to about 3. So it's 3 watts versus 50 watts for the same amount of brightness. And that obviously puts it in perspective in terms of the amount of power consumption.
So what drives the same amount of brightness, yet there's less electricity consumed?
So, of course, the technology in the LED, in the lights, means that they can achieve the same amount of brightness. But because brightness is actually measured in lumens. So it's easy for me to sit here and, of course, make a statement like that. But the biggest light manufacturers worldwide actually do tests where they measure lumens to say, look, we're using 3 watts here, but if I measure the brightness over there and measure the brightness over there with a halogen bulb using 50 watts, we're achieving the same amount of brightness.